Hey guys, let's do a room tour of my newest audio room, my vintage budget audio room that I'm building in the back of my house here. It's like a new office where I can work from my computer and people can see my albums and audio junk in the back here. Looks kind of cool. Actually, I do a lot of Zoom calls and it's more interesting than the average office. You know, people have their pictures of their kids. People love seeing vintage stuff when I'm doing my business Zoom calls. Anyway, this is the fourth audio turntable stereo I have set up in my house, okay? In the office, in the dining room, in the living room, and in the bedroom. This is budget stuff, and I'm going to go through each piece and tell you a little bit about the layout of this room. Audio room tours people seem to love them on YouTube, so let's do it. Here we go. Office chair I got for free out on the street. Yeah, that's how cheap I am. 12 cubes of IKEA I just set up, and I've got it on a metal stand here, so there's a space below it, but the thing's already bowing a little bit. I don't know if you can see that it's a little bit lower in the middle. Anyway, beautiful turntable. This is a Philips vintage turntable. It is the prettiest turntable I have in my collection. And I actually wanted to make this video before I take this turntable away because it's too unreliable, even though I've been trying to fix it for weeks. Okay, it's got this beautiful wood veneer. It's got a beautiful aluminum platter that you can see from the side. It's got a dust cover that is not cracked. How many vintage turntables do you find that the dust cover is not cracked? It's a little scratched, but it works fine. The hinges are actually great hinges. This thing has a 10-inch platter instead of a 12-inch. So the record hangs off the side by an inch, but it's a small footprint, so it fits nicely in tight spaces. The problem with this turntable is the tone arm is garbage, a garbage silly design. The head shell was really wonky. Everything was crooked. I've tried multiple times to heat it and bend it and glue it, and it sounds okay, but it's not good enough and reliable enough for my nice vintage and tone poet and fancy albums that I have here. So I think I'm gonna have to move this thing away, even though I love the way it looks. But let's look at the operation. So the receiver is already on. To turn this thing on, we've got to lift the little clampy thing here. Make sure the tone arm is in the up position. It kicks on quickly. This is belt drive, by the way. I bought this thing on, I think it was Craigslist, for 10 bucks. Guy came running out of an alley and handed me the turntable, and I handed him 10 bucks, and that was it. I had no idea how screwed up it was, but I figured for 10 bucks, you can't go wrong. And then I had to invest another $11 in the belt. Okay, so let's see how it works here. You got to place it by hand because it's semi-automatic, and then the cueing is really abrupt, but it works. And this is some weird Hindemith classical piano record. So it sort of works. Everything's kind of bent and crooked, and I've tried multiple times to unbend it, but you know, it basically works. It's a nice turntable. I'm going to end up swapping out a much uglier Techniques turntable. It's much more reliable. Okay, oh, by the way, this turntable light on a gooseneck was given to me by the wonderful Michael at Poetry on Plastic, great classical YouTuber. I won that in his contest, and he hand delivered it to me. It's a very cool gooseneck. I mounted it on the front here. I don't know if you can see that. I was going to mount it in the back, but I really use it a lot. I'm always bending it to look at albums and equipment and stuff here, so I think I'm going to keep it on the front. It's fine. Okay, let's go over to the Rotel receiver. This is an RX 1000L, which I got at a thrift shop. I think it was $14.99. And like most vintage receivers from the 70s and 80s, the light panel stops working. So if you know what you're doing, you can get in there and replace those lights. But I opened it up and I couldn't figure it out because taking it all apart is not as easy as you might think. I can get in there and I can spray the pots with contact cleaner so the pots are nice and clean. Beyond that, leave it to a pro. So this receiver like a lot of vintage 70s stuff. It has 2 sets of speakers. I've only got 1 set of speakers hooked up, but you can run 2 sets of speakers. Bass treble balance. And it's got some funky buttons here that you might not be familiar with. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit and focus. Loudness button we don't really need because I got massive bass in my speakers. The subsonic filter, really important. You guys don't see that much on equipment today. The subsonic filter filters out the ultra low frequencies below 20 hertz, and that's to keep, that's called a rumble filter. It keeps sort of turntable noise from getting through to your system and using up a lot of energy to ultimately, your amplifier doesn't need to be overburdened by reproducing low tones that can't even be heard or reproduced by your speakers. So a subsonic filter is a good thing to have. You don't see them anymore. Okay, we've got a stereo and mono mode. Oops, let's go back to stereo. And then we've got some functions here. Let me show you those real quick. Let's go over to FM. FM, I've only got 3 bars. I've got a nice tuner. And this is sort of a mid, in between the digital and analog stage of the 80s, because in the older 70s, hold on, too loud. The older 70s stuff, this tuning thing would have been a little dial-y thing, but now it's digital. So that was kind of the transition between analog and digital receiver technology. Let's see. The stereo mono button is really useful because this station's not coming in that strong. Hear the noise? You lose most of the noise when you switch to mono. One of the concertos by Jimmy. Even though you'd rather hear stereo, sometimes you got to go mono to cut down on the noise. That brings me to the question of the FM antenna. These old receivers did a great job of bringing in FM because that was really big back then, FM stereo. Well, I rigged up a crazy antenna. Let me show it to you. That's the T antenna. And I've spent so much time futzing with it and moving it around, and it's still only coming in at 3 out of 5 bars. So I'm going to continue to play with that. How to use and how to set up FM antenna is a whole subject for a whole other or another video. Okay, so this thing has auxiliary, phono, FM. The AM doesn't work at all. Everything else works great. And on the auxiliary, I've hooked up a vintage thrift store CD player. JVC XL V311 CD player. $10 at a thrift store, works fine. Works great. It's got all kinds of features on it I won't get into, but features you don't even find on CD players today. Unfortunately, it's a long way from this area. I put it up here and my wife said it looked stupid, so I took it off, and I'm sticking with the analog look, but I do have a lot of CDs also. Back to the turntable here. I'm going to end up unhooking this thing and swapping in the techniques, but before I do, let me just show you a couple of features. It's got an auto off and return function. Okay, check this out. Off button. Lift, move, and drop. And then you should clamp it in. Notice the hum here. Can you hear that? Okay, when I screwed with the head shell and tried to glue it and straighten it out, I caused some kind of hum that I cannot figure out. Get ready to say goodbye to the beautiful Philips turntable. The IKEA stuff. I've been gluing in the backstops, which you can't really see back there. Gluing the wood backstop so everything stops. Nice even lines. This is 8 cubes of jazz, 2 cubes of miscellaneous. Then I'm going to put doors on here on the side. Oh, I forgot to tell you about the speakers. Vintage Saras speakers, S-A-R-A-S. A brand that has been defunct for years. No one knows anything about. These were beat up, again, thrift shop. Beautiful walnut. I oiled them and fixed up the wood really nice. Oh, it's good. Anyway, these are big, giant speakers, bigger than they need to be for a room this big, but I'm using them as stands for the IKEA soft lighting. That's the room tour. Room number 4. There's 3 other rooms I'll get to when I can. All right, guys. Thank you. Let me know what your thoughts are on vintage audio. Oh, you know what I didn't tell you about? Yeah, I told you everything. It's good enough. All right, guys. Have a good one.